Good evening, everyone. On behalf of YWCA Edmonton and the Searching for Izena Project, I want to warmly welcome you to tonight's panel discussion about the history and experience of Indigenous women running for office in Alberta. My name is Sandra Muchekeza, and I am a YWCA Edmonton and Searching for Izena volunteer. During the day, I am the Executive Director at the Council of Canadians of African and Caribbean Heritage. Before I begin, I want to respectfully acknowledge that YWCA Edmonton is located on Treaty 6 territory, a traditional gathering place for diverse Indigenous peoples, including the Cree, Blackfoot, Métis, Nakota Sioux, Iroquois, Dene, Ojibwe, Saulteaux, Anishinaabe, Inuit, and many other whose histories, languages, and cultures continue to influence our vibrant community. Thanks again for joining us tonight. You are about to meet 4 amazing Indigenous women who have both won and lost at the ballot box in Alberta. We are going to hear directly from them about why they ran, the experiences they faced on the campaign trail, and ways we can help to elect more Indigenous women to different decision-making bodies across our province. In total, only about 6 Indigenous women have served on municipal councils across the province. In Edmonton, 3 Indigenous women have run for council. None have been successful yet. The Searching for Izena Project is proud to host tonight's conversation because not only are we celebrating the 100th anniversary this year of the first woman, Izena Ross, being elected to Edmonton City Council, but our volunteers are also working hard to find ways to encourage more women to seek public office. To help guide tonight's conversation, we've asked Edmonton City Councillor Erin Paquette to serve as a moderator. Councillor Paquette was first elected in Ward 4 in 2017. Erin's work is shaped by his passion for community building and common sense decision-making. Prior to his election to council, Erin owned a thriving small business and worked as an award-winning Indigenous artist and author. Please view the chat box for his full bio. So with that, please take it away, Councillor Paquette. Thank you.
Unmute myself. Thank you so much, Sandra, for that great introduction. I'm happy to be here. And I'm really honored to be talking today with these amazing women, Ogama Eskwewak. However, in my opinion, you can just say Eskwewak because when you say women in Cree, the boss is already implied. So here we go. And I would like to just very quickly introduce our panelists, and their full bios you can find in your mailouts, but we've got Catherine Swampy. Now, Catherine is a mother of 5 biological children, but together with her husband, Armand Swampy, they have raised 11 children. Oh boy. So she is a band counselor for the Samson Cree Nation, and she has also ran to become a member of the Legislative Assembly of Alberta and a member of Parliament of Canada. And we will also be pleased to have on our panel Taz Augustine. Now, Taz is a descendant of the original people of this land. She is a retired social worker with a continued vision for increased representation of Indigenous voices within council, or within City Council. And she is actually, in 2013, she ran for council. In 2017, she was the first Indigenous female mayoral candidate for the city of Edmonton. Now, Cheryl Chagnon Grey Eyes. She is a member of Muskeg Lake Cree Nation in Saskatchewan, Treaty 6, but resides in Calgary, Treaty 7, Alberta. She earned a BA in Communications and a BA in Canadian Native Studies from the University of Calgary. And I'm going to let you read more about her because there's so much. Gabrielle Blatz is a first-term city councillor in Wetaskiwin, Alberta. In addition to being a city councillor, she graduated in 2015 from Red Deer College from the Medical Laboratory Assistant Program. Since then, she has worked at the Wetaskiwin Hospital and Care Center, Ponoka Hospital and Care Center, as well as the Centennial Center for Brain Injury and Mental Health. And I could go on and on, but this literal, like, next few paragraphs is all about Gabrielle. So,
Recording.
looks like we're getting some feedback. So these are the amazing women who will be on our panel tonight. Now, before we jump in, and I want to jump in very quickly, maybe just a little bit of background. While Indigenous women were granted the right to vote in federal elections in 1921, it was not until 1960 that all First Nations peoples, men and women, were granted that same right without giving up their treaty rights and status. Unlike First Nations, Inuit women, I think we're getting some feedback. I think we might have double mics on. There we go. Okay. It's always tricky with Zoom. Even though we're a year in, there's always new things to find out. So Inuit women and men had the right to vote in federal elections held after 1950. Métis men never had specific restrictions put on the right to vote, and Métis women obtained the right in 1921 alongside non-Aboriginal women. So that is sort of a base, and here we are now in the year 2021 with all of these challenges, but also all of these amazing opportunities and these wonderful, wonderful fire carriers who are showing us the way. So what I would like to do, first of all, is so that you can get to know these women in their own words. I will ask our panelists, who are you? And why did you want to run in the first place? And I guess I will start with Cheryl.
Anse, okay. Greetings from Calgary. I am speaking from Calgary, which is on Treaty 7. Calgary is known as Mohkinstsis in Blackfoot, which is short for elbow. I honor the people of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Kainai, Siksika, and Piikani. Also the Stoney Nakoda people of Morley, Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nation, the Dene of Tsuut'ina, and Calgary is located in Region 3 of the Métis Nation of Alberta. I always acknowledge the land that I'm on, which is here in Calgary. I was the leader of the Green Party of Alberta between 2018 and 2019. I lasted a year. I was the first Indigenous woman to lead a recognized political party in Canada. And I'm very happy to have broken that ceiling, broken right through that barrier. And I'm keeping it open so that more youngsters will come up behind me. These strong, beautiful women can have their voices heard and speak for the people of whom they represent. I have always been a Green Party supporter. I had known Elizabeth May for 7 years before I was asked to run as the leader. I had been singing and drumming with my daughter at her Stampede breakfast every year. We were regulars. And so we got to know and get to know the Green Party very well, of which I'm very supportive. For me, the Green Party, the 6 tenets of the Green Party aligned with the 7 sacred teachings. So it is something that I hold dear and clear to my heart. And I'm blessed to be able to share that in a good way. People say, why did you run? Because they asked me. They asked me, so I did. And I had been running against 2 other men, 2 men. One of the fellows dropped out about halfway through the campaign for the leadership. And when we had our leadership vote at the provincial convention, the Green Party, surprisingly, I won by 72% of the vote. I was quite surprised because I didn't anticipate actually winning. I just wanted to make sure that there was representation. 1 female, 2 Indigenous. So for me, it was very much about showing up. I was asked, I showed up. Here I was. And it was a difficult campaign. We were basically against the UCP and the NDP. And one of the refrains I kept hearing is, oh, I really like what you say, but I have to vote this way because, I have to vote that way because. So it was about splitting votes. And I was looked at, they liked what I had to say, but they already basically made up their mind, many of the voters in Alberta. I tried very hard to get more representatives. We did have a number of Indigenous people that were running this time. And it was a very good learning. And I'm very pleased that I survived. People have said, do you want to go back? No, I think I'm cured of politics now, but I'd like to leave the door open and mentor people as they come along behind me and help where I can, when I can, in a very good way. It's about speaking your own truth, and I can only share my story and where I'm coming from. And as a city-raised girl, we would spend our summers out at Muskeg Lake. So I knew my cousins, they all lived very close. But my mother was also a survivor of the residential school system. And as such, she did not want me to learn Cree. She taught me French. Oh, I'll teach you French. I thought it was a secret language between my aunties. They were speaking it and they made them laugh a lot. And now I'm at the point where I am picking up bits and pieces of Cree. So I'm grateful to be connected to my culture that way. I'm also blessed to have my daughter involved. We had been on this activist road since 2012 with Idle No More. And we would show up with our drums and our words in a good way to inspire, to raise voices, especially for those who are not able to speak, whose voices have been dismissed. So for me, it was very important that I shared what I knew and what I could and open that door and let that platform be there for others to know they could make it through that door as well. Here in Calgary, we actually have Marilyn North Pecan, who is Blackfoot, is going to be running in Ward 7. So we have another woman who's running for City Council here in Calgary.
That's
I
great.
know in Edmonton, a friend of mine, Corey Longo, is running in Ward Métis. Yay, Corey. And I know her, again, from the University of Calgary, where I worked for 13 years. I was admin coordinator at the Native Center for 13 wonderful years, loved my job. And when I decided upon retirement, I had gone to a sweat lodge and I prayed, Creator, where do you want me to go? What do you want me to do? Be careful what you pray for. And not a week after that sweat that I had gone to, I was asked by Susan Stroud to run for the leadership position. So things happened the way they happened. It was a challenge. I did face racism, misogyny, discrimination. I was often dismissed.
We're going to get back to that.
Okay, great.
Really
Thank you very much, Aaron.
I think about 7 minutes. We got to move on to another person.
Appreciate that. Thank you. And I'm very pleased to be sharing this screen with these wonderful women.
Drums, songs, and good words. I love that. Let's go to Catherine Swampy. The floor is yours.
Nanaskabao mamotawimao kisemanito hi and dotemte kanochki skau. Thank you all for joining us here tonight. A little bit about myself that wasn't covered. You really should read the bio. There's too much. Don't ask a person about themselves. They can go on forever. Aside from being a mother of 11, a biological mother of 5, my husband and I raised 2 of his brothers, and seeing as how today is today, I will mention today. On April 12, 2013, my husband's younger brother, one of whom we kept, committed suicide, and today is the 8th year anniversary of his death. So I will mention that. It was very hard to go through. My husband and I started counseling other youth, and we just really poured our hearts out into loving as much children as we possibly can to ensure they know how important and how loved they are. So after we had raised 2 of his brother-in-laws, we then kept 2 of my nieces and 2 of my nephews, as well as our 5 biological children. So we still have 5 in the house right now. Many are now adults and moved out, and we have what my kids are calling my grandchildren, but they're really my nieces and nephews. But it's okay. I like being a gukum. Nokom, however they want to say it. And aside from that, I'm a student. I'm in my PhD of Public Policy Administration, and I'm a counselor for Samson Cree Nation. I sit on a million boards and a million committees, far too many to name. It would take forever to list all of them. And why did I start getting involved in politics? Well, I was always political. I never saw myself as someone political. And my sister and I actually had a conversation about this just the other day, and it broke me down to tears. She was so proud of me that this was something I had been doing since I was 11. I stood up. I experienced a bit of racism in my grade 6 class. I don't remember what my teacher had said to me. I don't remember any of the words that were exchanged between us. I remember how it made me feel. And I remember standing up and storming out of the classroom and causing a big uprising in my grade 6 classroom. I was 11 years old and I started protesting. She had to have a public apology. I was brought into the principal's office where she apologized to me. We had it in our little school newsletter, and that's where it all began. And it's a shame, you know, as proud as I can look back and be like, wow, I was just a baby. I was 11. I've raised so many kids. I look at them when they're that young and I'm like, wow, I was doing stuff at that young. But it's not something I really want my kids to endure. It's not something to be proud of or to look at and think as a wonderful thing. It made me cry because it means I've been fighting since I was 11, and probably more so before then. But actually really standing up and doing stuff as an activist, as a protester, as a quote unquote terrorist. If we want to go far back to Bill C-51 back in 2000, what was it, 15? Anyways, I'm not a terrorist. I'm a good person, I swear. I try to be. It was done with good intentions. It was an act against oppression. And it was for not only being an Indigenous person, but it was for self-worth. You know, I was worth something. I shouldn't have been treated like that. I shouldn't have been disregarded and treated as such just because I was Indigenous. And I don't want any children to endure anything like that. And my why can go as far back to every time I've experienced oppression, every time I've experienced discrimination. I grew up in poverty. You can't drink the water here at my house. My mom and my older brothers went to residential school. Myself and my husband went to day school. Me and my brothers and sisters, like the younger ones, if you want to call us younger, we're not that much younger than our older brothers and sisters, but residential school just ended in 1995. I was in grade 5. And although I wasn't in residential school, I was in quote unquote day school. We experienced the same things. I was Nipsey, well, a lot of people won't know what that means. I was whipped with a willow. It means, Nipsey means willow. And I was Nipsey'd in school. And I thought it was normal. But when I think back, I would not allow anyone to Nipsey my children, especially as young as kindergarten. That's when I was Nipsey'd, was in kindergarten. And it's shocking to me to think back and how I thought those experiences were normal, and they're not. And when I explain some of this stuff to my own children so that they'll have an understanding of how far we've come, it's important to note all of that. Like, you're asking my why. It's way too long to explain in here.
Well, that's a good why, and that's been 7 minutes. So I'm going to see if we can keep the next responses down to 5. I'm going to put on a timer. I'm not even joking. I guess we'll keep going down. Gabrielle, please. You've got 5 minutes or less.
I'll be sure to try and stay in that time frame. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Gabrielle Blatz. I am a Region 4 Métis. I was born and raised in the Wetaskiwin area and live right in the city of Wetaskiwin. And yeah, like the start of my experience in politics was in 2019. I was elected during a by-election in Wetaskiwin at the age of 23. I'm 25 years old now. As with Catherine, I feel like there's been so many times throughout my life where I feel like I've always been political growing up. I've always seen oppression. I've always wanted to help out in social justice areas. And I always felt this deep need in me to try and help those that don't have a voice. And so my friends and I, we were trying to figure out ways to just help out in our community. So we started out with a charity group that we started. We had about 14 members by the end of it. It was called Sequoia Roots Movement. And what we did was just on ground level wanted to educate the youth and the young adults in our community on the issues that are happening in our area and how we can help. So we just did food drives, sock drives, helped out with our local emergency shelter, and we raised some money for the Ermine Skin Women's Shelter as well as the Camrose Women's Shelter. And we just kind of did what we thought was best at the time to try and help out the community that raised us. After about a year and a half of that, I got a phone call from a friend who was asking if I was planning on running in the by-election. So the first thing I said was no, and I'm not interested. And I hung up the phone. And it was because I thought to myself, I have no shot at winning. I am 23 years old, I'm a woman, and I'm Métis. And I thought of all of those as barriers to me getting in politics because that hasn't been done before in Wetaskiwin. And I thought about it for a while. I called my parents, I called my friends and asked them what they thought. And they were like, no, you should go for it. This is something that we always thought that you would be working towards. And so I thought, okay, it's worth it just to try. And so called back my friend and I started thinking to myself all these questions, which was, what impact can my life make on the future generations? And what if this will spark a movement for youth to get involved in politics? And what can I do to change the game in politics for Indigenous women and for young women? And so all of those were huge drivers in my campaign. I used the quote, "You can't be what you can't see." And I wanted to show young women, Indigenous women, I wanted to show them that they can do it. And so we did the campaign, we won, and it's been such a life-changing experience to be able to hear the issues in our community and be able to actually do something about it in a meaningful manner. And just be that person that women can look at and see, she did it, so now I can do it too. And so I'm just hoping to pave the way for other women in politics and other Indigenous people in politics.
That's wonderful. Thank you. With a minute 30 to spare even. I think you've been on council for a bit. All right, so we will now move on to Taz, and I just want to let everyone know that the title of this whole evening was gifted to us by Taz. So I want to give special thanks for that. But please, Taz, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Aaron. Nice to see you again. And nanaskum tanawa samina sino kapi doktito ota kapi squatia. Thank you all for joining us. I really appreciate it. You know, I'm in a late time. I'm actually in New Brunswick right now, and we're 3 hours ahead of you guys. So I'm going back in time talking to you guys. It's actually 10:30 here. It's late. So I was having a bit of a struggle getting things going. Anyways, the reason I went into politics, wow, lots of reasons. You know, I grew up in Edmonton most of my life, but I did start my life off in a small community called Foster, Alberta. And back there, we were living off the land. We were very traditional. My parents were hunters and fishermen and trappers, and my whole family was involved. I know how to live off the land very easily. I also know how to build different things. We didn't live in teepees. We lived in cabins. And so when school was out, you know, my mother and my father would take us across the lake, and we would live totally off the land there rather than going to any shops or stores. Buying candies was alien to us. Having candy was alien to us. Was not something I grew up with until I didn't even know anything about it till we moved to Edmonton when I was about 7 years old. And when we moved to Edmonton, I saw the vast change in environment. We lived by a lake, and eating store groceries was not the same as eating the food off the land. So my diet changed that time as well. And I was very observant as a child to watch all these things. And I can remember in grade 3, the teacher speaking and reading a book, a history book, social studies book about Indians in Canada. And I stood up in that class and spoke loudly and said, no, that's not true, because I'm an Indian. Back then we called ourselves Indians. I says, I'm an Indian. And I says, we're nothing like that. So you're not telling the truth right now. Well, I got sent to the principal's office for that one. And so I think I've been sent to the principal's office ever since. So, because I am outspoken, I do speak my mind. I'm not afraid. I've been raised by parents who gave me a voice, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm rooted in my culture. I'm rooted in my language. I understand Nihiawiwin, I speak it, and I understand it very well. So I know that it also comes with it, and knowing the language, values and beliefs. And the culture also has value beliefs, and spiritual practices have our values and beliefs. And those things are strongly instilled in me. And so every step of my growing up in Edmonton, I've educated people about who we are and having them understand. And I can remember coming home from school and telling my mother about the difference. And she said, people are different. And that's when I learned difference is okay. There's nothing wrong with difference. Creator would have us be different, and that's all right. But as I grew older, I saw a difference in the way that people were treating different people based on what they owned and how much they had. And I saw people who had less than being treated differently than people who seemed to have more. And the color of skin played a part in that as well. So I've always been observant. And so when my brother came home from Vancouver, diagnosed with HIV, and he was HIV positive in 1980, I was his primary caregiver. And I really observed, and I went through myself, the stigmatization of being Indigenous and having a brother living with me who was HIV positive. And I then felt for the first time quite strongly racial profiling, racial stereotyping, and discrimination, not only for him being HIV positive, but for us being Indigenous as well. And I was working for Strathcona Transit at that time, I can remember one of the bus drivers coming behind me and wiping down the seat as if there was going to be, he was going to be infected with HIV at that time, and everybody at the workplace trying to talking to let me go because I was taking care of my brother. So the social issues began at that point being addressed. And I can remember standing up for my brother when he was weak. And it was social workers who actually helped me through that time and our ceremonies and kept me grounded. And my mother had passed, our father was not doing well, so we couldn't rely on them for strength. And the rest of my family, we were all going through a lot of grief because of the HIV diagnosis and the stigma attached to that at that time. So it changed my life, and it changed my outlook on life, and thus began my political, journey, because I started advocating for my brother. And I started advocating for people who had HIV. I started advocating for people who were sick. I started advocating for other people who were less than, people who had addictions. And then when I started social work, we started to study intergenerational trauma and other things like the genocide assimilation policy. At the same time, I was teaching the culture to the people in the school. And I couldn't believe what they didn't know about our culture, our background, and who we are as a people. There was a lot of profiling. And I can remember one professor, calling me into the office. He was the person who was my professor to keep me in my practicum, who I was supposed to turn to for support. And we were always fighting. And he wanted to quit on me. He said, why don't you get another professor? Because you and I can't seem to get along. I says, no way, we're not quitting. I says, you are not quitting on me. I says, you're exactly what I need to battle in this world. I said, the white man. And he said, what? If I can't stand up to you here now, I'll never be able to stand up to the white people. I said, the people who run all these systems that I see going on. Therefore, you're not quitting on me. I said, you're going to help me. You're going to help me have that voice. You're going to help me strengthen so I can speak loud and clearly and not be afraid. Well, thank you, Dwayne Massing, because he did hang in there and became a good friend of mine afterwards. And so I'm grateful for him hanging in there. And we need that support from other people. You know, it's not because of genocide, we've lost a lot of skills. And I know all this history and I teach it. So that's probably the biggest reason I went into politics, is that I'm not afraid to speak out. I'm not afraid to address issues that need to be addressed. And I'm not afraid to stand up as an Indigenous woman and represent.
Wow. Thank you very much for that. So listening carefully to everything that you all had to say, one of the things that stood out for me is that a lot of the reasons or motivations for you to run are rooted in very old systems in this country and rooted in very old viewpoints and prejudices and policies that have negatively impacted the land and Indigenous people. I find that really fascinating. And so along with all of that history that is very much alive in you, it's not ancient, it's very present. Along with that, you are women who are stepping into the realm of politics. And more than that, you are Indigenous women stepping into the realm of politics. And I know, I don't have any doubt that you have experienced a level of discrimination that most people could not imagine. And it may be painful to hear this, but for people who are thinking about getting into politics, the people that you hope to inspire, other young Indigenous women, they should be prepared for this. Unfortunately, it seems to be a reality. So I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind speaking to this a little bit. And I'll start with Catherine, because you actually got a lot of press on this. So I'm just wondering if you would mind commenting on that.
Sure. So for those who aren't aware, back in 2015, I ran provincially and I ran federally. I also ran in 2019. I faced racism my entire life. I was not prepared for the level of racism I was going to get when I started the campaign. It took me completely by surprise. I was receiving Facebook messages. I was receiving Facebooks. There was spray paint on my signs. My signs were shot. There was spit in my face. There was doors slammed in my face. People saying extremely racist things to me. I was dubbed the NDP Indian girl for a bit there. And it was like, I'm trying to talk about it in a way where I'm disassociating myself. It's my coping mechanism to get through it. It was hard. It was very hard. And I felt unsupported. Here I was trying to fight and help, I'm going to say, the middle class families of Alberta, and really stand there and ensure that they weren't the ending result of taxpayers. Like they were not going to be the ones that were taxed in the event of our upcoming downfall of oil back in 2015. So I was fighting for them, trying to help them. And the very people I was fighting for, trying to help, were the ones spitting in my face and calling me names and putting me down and spray painting my signs and shooting my signs. And it was to the point of death threats, people saying, if you come to my door, I will shoot you in your effing face. And it was kind of scary. And I coped and I disassociated and I pretended that everything was okay. And I just kept going. And I had friends and family who had gone out and door knocked with me to be there as support. I had times where I even went entirely by myself. And there was concern from family and friends that I wasn't quitting, that I was continuing to door knock. But I had like this feeling of needing to prove them wrong or something, and needing to stand up and say that no matter what they said, I wasn't going to be afraid. I wasn't going to let them push me out of the ring. I wasn't going to let their hatred and their discrimination, their racism, push me out. A lot of people told me to go back to the res. that I didn't belong in provincial politics, that I was going to turn the province into a reserve. And there was the most famous quote that I had a higher chance of turning up missing or murdered than I did of winning in that riding. So there was a lot, like there's so much. The way I got through it, because when you're in the middle of it, it's kind of surreal. It keeps happening, and you just kind of, as I said, like, I don't know if it was just me, if many people do that, but I just sort of pretended it wasn't happening to me, and it was just happening to my campaign or something. And it was a part of coping, but at the same time, I'm so thankful for the people that I did have in my life that were super close to me, like my husband or my sister, my best friend, Chevy Rabbit, who was out there door knocking with me and wanted to, I'm pretty sure he called the cops. She called the cops, and she was so mad that someone had spit in my face, and she was standing in their yard yelling and screaming at them. And I was embarrassed, and I'm like, let's go. It doesn't matter. But I mean, their support really got me through all that. So for future reference, I don't want to scare anyone and be like, oh, it's so bad, don't do it. No, please don't listen to that. You can do it. If there's anything that we were gifted, is the resilience in our blood. You know, our ancestors, if they can go through tuberculosis, smallpox, being confined to reserves, being stuck in residential schools, going through the 60s scoop, enduring systemic racism like overpopulation in jails and overpopulation in children family services, and we're still alive today, then you can endure a little bit of racism. We're resilient and we can get through it.
That's great. Wow. Thank you. For the rest of you, you can answer this as well, but I'm going to move on and add another layer of question into it. And that is that one thing that I've found that I hear a lot from Indigenous youth and young people that I have mentored as they've grown up is that it's a struggle for them because they're perceived, just because of who they are, to be less intelligent or less capable or less educated. And I'm just, you know, I've seen Gabrielle nodding a lot while Catherine was speaking. So Gabrielle, I'll pass it to you now.
Yeah, no, I definitely got that aspect of what you're talking about, Erin. When I was knocking at the doors, that was a huge perception that I got, was that people would listen to my spiel and my platform and they'd be vibing with it. And then they'd look at me and they'd say, no, but I can't vote for you though. And I'd ask why, if you like my platform. And they said, come back in a few years and maybe if you get an education. You don't have a degree, so I don't think that I can trust what you're saying. And that comes from a place of being young, but that also comes from a place of being Indigenous as well, where, like you said, there is that perception of less education. I never did get a degree, but I'm not ashamed of that at all. I work in a field where I am helping people every day in whatever way I can in the healthcare industry. But it's interesting to hear that other people have had that same experience, because I always kind of felt alone in that, where that was a really big barrier that I had to get over, was trying to tell these people, I know what I'm talking about. And that's why it's in my platform, is because I know what I'm talking about. But for some reason, people really couldn't get over the idea of, you don't have a degree. Some of them said, I'll only vote for you if you have a degree in finance, to which I asked them, which counselor do you know that has a degree in finance? And why is it only me that has to have a degree? So for me, that was a really hard part. But touching back on racism, I think that it was something that I didn't really think of too much as being my biggest barrier. I thought that being young and woman was big enough of a barrier. But it wasn't until I first started up my campaign and I had some exterior individuals approach me. And I'm very proud of being Métis. I talk about it all the time. And they told me, make sure that you don't mention that you're Métis in your campaign. And I asked why. And they said that might stop people from voting for you, because if anybody has any deep-centered racism in them, they'll hear, oh, but she's Métis. And then they'll just shut down completely and not want to vote for you. And that was a huge thing that really bothered me to hear, is that there were people that were supporting me, but at the same time, they were telling me, if you can, just dial that back for who you are as a person. And to me, that was something that I wanted to be celebratory about, is I wanted to celebrate the fact that I am Indigenous and going into this. And so to me, that didn't end up happening. I was a rebel, and, you know, everybody knew that I was Métis. But at the same time, though, that was really crushing for me to hear, because it was multiple individuals who told me this. And shortly after I got elected, I had a meeting with someone who is elderly, and they were really happy to be speaking with me. And the whole time, it was so positive what they were telling me, until the end, where they said, wow, I really feel like I can talk to you, but everybody here is so wrong about you. I'm like, oh, in what way? And he said, well, we all just thought that you were a dirty half-breed that was going to turn Wetaskiwin into a reserve, but now I know that that's not true. And that, I will say, I am a very strong person, but I did call my mom and cry in my car when I got home, because that comments of racism cut really deep into you, because it is something that is purely about the person that you were born as. And that cuts deep. And that was something that was very heartbreaking for me to go through. But at the same time, these are all comments that just drive me even harder to want to get more Indigenous people into politics and get more women into politics. You think that we have a lack of education? Well, I will show you that that's not true. And you think that we can't do this and that we're going to bring too much culture into this? No, diversity is our strength, especially in Canada. And so that is something that drives me. And it's something that I don't wish for anyone else to experience. But at the same time, I'm hoping that past this point, people can start recognizing women in leadership positions that are Indigenous, and it'll just become the norm. And people will see these things and it won't be as foreign to them.
Thank you for that. That's what an experience. You know, Taz, that makes me think of, and I'm sure you've heard this, people saying, oh, well, if you win, you're just going to care about Indigenous people. You're going to care only about Native issues, and you're going to, not do anything for the rest of us. And they say that, but they don't say that to any other kind of candidate. It's like, oh, if you win, you're just going to care about 55-year-old men. It's only it seems to be Indigenous people, and particularly Indigenous women. So I'm just wondering if you had any thoughts along the lines of what we'd heard from Catherine and Gabrielle and your own experience.
Well, it just breaks my heart to hear that these young women are still going through that kind of crap. I consider myself tough. And I think I was toughened by being the 19th child in my family and having to deal with many types of personalities, right? And being able to deal with bullies, having been the elder at the Edmonton Remand for 5 years, working with gang members and working with people who were really oppressed in all kinds of ways, and angry, very angry, and lack of understanding and lack of education, and not understanding why they're in the position they're at, has helped me to be a little bit more, I guess, open to dialogue and open to debate with people. So sometimes in the campaign, when they would come up with things of like in that way of saying, oh, you're just going to take care of the Indigenous people. And I said, well, of course I'm going to take care of the Indigenous people, but I'm also going to take care of you and your needs, because I think you have some commonalities in that you're lacking funds for, and I'd say education or funds for, and I'd be able to bring in the commonalities that I saw when they tell me a little bit about themselves. And but I think that it's because my age has something to do with that, perhaps, and my experiences in life. But I did have a lot of people, because I've worked in Edmonton most of my life, went to school in Edmonton most of my life, attended college, university in Edmonton. I had a lot of different support. It wasn't just Indigenous. It was a lot of different cultures. So a lot of different people were able to educate on my behalf. And if I say I had a friend who was having a problem, if I have someone who was having a problem with me because they're East Indian, well, I have East Indian friends who could talk to that person and educate them differently. So I had different avenues for doing that. I have a tough skin because I don't take it personal. I take it as it's a structural, what you would call it, a structural thing that's happening where Canada is built on racism and oppression. And it's going to take us a long time to change that and to alter that. And we're in just baby steps of doing that. And so I think of myself as a seed planter. That's what I thought of in the beginning, as always a seed planter in making these changes. And changes won't happen unless I can withstand the hatred, withstand the racism. You know, when I was doing things for Idle No More and protesting, I would be the one with the drum walking right in the middle of the group of people and educating them and yelling at the top of my lungs, you know, you're on Indigenous land and you have to understand who we are as a people and have some respect, honestly, right? So I had much more energy back then and I was younger and stronger. So today I'm a little bit more subdued, but I still will speak out when I walk into a room. And even when I'm invited to meetings, I take opportunity to increase awareness and to obtain more support. Anytime I'm asked to speak anywhere or invited to any kind of meeting in Edmonton, you know, I'm always invited to speak at the podium. Doesn't matter what it is. And so I go up and I always acknowledge, you know, who we are as a sovereign people. And then I also acknowledge that whose land people are standing on. And then I give the big question to the people. Stand up if you're against us or for us. And yes, you're on Indigenous land and you need to wake up to that. That's a fact. It's not something we're making up. And Canada has to wake up to that. And, you know, we do that in baby steps. Edmonton, Municipal, people don't even understand that's the first name of it. So, you know, we need to educate people even more. And education actually breaks through that barrier of racism and the bullying that comes with racism. I'm not afraid of bullies. I don't back down. I push back. And people know that of me. So I didn't experience near the level of racism others have because I'm well known in Edmonton, very well known.
Right. Well, thank you very much for that. Now, Cheryl, after absorbing all of those words, and I'm thinking about your description of your campaign, and you were about to tell us about some of the challenges you had along those same lines. And I'd love to hear what you have to say. But I was also, it was interesting to me because you mentioned that you had run for the Green Party. And obviously that really aligns with your feelings about your connection to the earth and things like that. And so I would imagine that in Calgary, you faced a lot of opposition, not just for your political stance, but also simply because of your background, and those things paired together kind of probably had an exponential impact. I'd love to hear it.
Very much so. Nothing like being green in redneck Alberta. It's a challenge. And it really is a challenge because you're either for oil or anti-oil. And I wasn't that way. It's like we need to embrace the future. And like it or not, it's a future that oil is not going to be the be all and end all in this province. For me, it was about connecting with people, that we are all relations, all my relations. We're all treaty people. And as a responsibility to uphold the treaties of Canada. And a lot of Canadians have no idea what that means. It's like that's over there somewhere. They don't realize that's who they are. They are treaty people. They do have a responsibility to the people that they're with in their cities, in their towns, in their province. And I agree with the other ladies that we're there for the people. We're there for not just Indigenous folks. We're there for everybody and everybody's children. And we think 7 generations back, what will the elders think of the choices I'm making today to 7 generations forward? How will this impact my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren? And that's something that we share in common with all other people, with the other people that we are engaging with. And for me, it's about finding things of commonality and reasons for us to be able to open discussion and talk and share. And you can't change people's minds unless you change their heart and change the way they feel about things. One of the things that I have been doing is, you've probably heard of the blanket exercise. And why I've embraced that is that it does for that very much. It gives hard, cold facts about the discrimination, about colonialism, the systemic racism within this country, that it's still based on. The Indian Act is the most racist piece of legislation on this planet. And that is impacting every single person in this country, both as Indigenous and non-Indigenous. And it's broken and it needs to be fixed. We need to be able to work together to move forward. And I think that that's really where my focus always was, is how do we move forward together? We can't do this us and them. Because when you divide people, you can't move together in a good way. So for me, it was very, very much about focusing on what we can do to move forward. Let's look at what we want, not what we don't want. We can criticize all we want. There's always going to be critics. And we can't please everybody. And I knew that. What I didn't anticipate was the level of racism and misogyny within my own party. I thought I had support. And maybe I was naive. I like to think more that I was naively optimistic. And I believe that there's possibility and we can grow together and learn together. And when you change people's hearts, you change the way they look at things. When you change, yeah, and that really matters to me. It's how do you change the way people look at things? How can you alter their perception of what is? And for me, it's about sharing. The racism, the discrimination, the misogyny, especially. I was very much patted on the head. That's very nice. Okay, we've heard from you now, and dismissed. And I go, no, I have something to say here, and I'm going to say it, and I'm going to share it, and you can't quiet me. And I did have people saying, oh, you're shoving all this Indigenous stuff down our throats. Well, I'm going, yeah, and that was just the way it is. Look, I have something here to share with you. And that is how I would do it. I would share in a good way. I tried really hard to share in a good way. And I agree about the door knocking. You never know who's on the other side of the door, where they're coming from, what they've been through, the systemic racism that is ingrained within each and every one of them, from our own education system, from the politics, from the newspapers, the media. It's ingrained, and we have to stand up. And that's why we're raising our voices in a good way. And sometimes it's raising your voice in song to make change. Sometimes it's raising your voice in a whisper for people to listen to you. So for me, it was very much about what can I do to affect change? Focus on where you want to go. We know where we've been. Now, where do we want to go to affect change? And how can we make the world a better place for our kids? And it's just little things that we changed. The attitudes, one person at a time, very much so. And just as an example, our educational curriculum in this province, we're not going to let it go the way of the Americans and the Trumpism. There's so many people standing up for our kids, our grandkids, and saying, no, this is not okay. This is colonialism. This is a focus on Americanism. We are Canada. Let's focus on our Canadian history. Let's focus on our communities and our people. Let's focus on what we can do and how we can help our kids to help one another and break down those barriers. And the only way you do that is by raising levels of understanding.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. It's humbling to be in the position I am, speaking to you, because what I'm getting is grace, strength, calm, forgiveness, intelligence, passion, and an overall sense of love for all the people that you would hope to serve, despite the experiences that maybe you have had in your own communities, in the broad community in Canada. It's astounding, really, and it speaks to the strength that kept Indigenous peoples' cultures and communities alive over centuries of really tough times through policy from government. And so that's very fascinating to me, that it is policy that led to this situation, and it's policy that you hope to change to make a better future for everyone. So we've got 3 minutes before we move to the Q&A. So I'm just going to challenge you, maybe 30 seconds each, to sort of give a closing thought before we move into questions from folks who are watching this panel tonight. And we'll begin with Gabrielle.
Yeah, so I would say that while it's a challenge and there's barriers that you have to overcome, I would say that it is 100% worth it in the end. My favorite point that happened during my election was the day after I won. A lady and her daughter approached me, and she is 8 years old. And her mom said, "Hey, that's the girl whose sign was in our yard. She won the election last night." And her daughter looked at her mom and she said, "Mommy, a girl won?" And that to me made everything that I went through completely worth it.
Thank you. Taz, please go ahead.
I'd just like to encourage people to take the risk. You know, life is an adventure. And really, sometimes we just have to step off our safe zone, comfort zone, and take a risk into something else. So if you have an urge, any type of urge that's in you that wants to go into politics, well, light that flame. Talk to more people. Aaron, you're a wonderful mentor. Congratulations on getting a seat. You know, people who know and understand how to get a seat, and educate yourself in that process. Don't be afraid. Don't let fear be something that leads you in your life. That is not the wonderful spirit way of living, you know, and let love be your guide. Seriously, let love be your guide, because there's a lot of people out there that do love us. And there's a lot of people out there that will love you in your attempts to be of service. And there's a lot of people that will be grateful that you take that leap. As the elders say, yes, you're putting yourself in a line of fire, but fire is sacred as well. So don't be afraid. Jump in there and do it. You know, if you have a mind to it, just go ahead and do it. And then ask questions and gather information from all kinds of people, build yourself a team, and start getting some sponsors. And anybody can do this at any time. You know, we live in a democratic society, and the Indigenous people are a little bit behind in the mainstream politics, but there's no reason why we shouldn't be heading the whole game.
Love it. All right, Cheryl, you've got your 30 seconds.
You got it right on there, Taz. It is about focus on love, because that's the only thing that beats fear. And people are afraid, and you need to show them with love, with gentleness, the good way. You get up, you get dressed, and you show up. And I was asked, and I said yes. So I'm encouraging you, yes, give it a try. You don't know unless you've tried. You have no idea what you can accomplish unless you just go for it. And I'm telling those women and girls who are watching this, the mums and the grandmas, the cookums out there, let them know that they can do anything they want to do. They can. You focus on where you want to go, what you want to be, what you want to accomplish, and keep that vision in mind. Focus on where you want to go. That's my advice. Thank you.
Beautiful. And Catherine, take us away.
Well, since time immemorial, Indigenous women have been leaders. And maybe over the last, I'm going to say 150 years, probably not even, we have been prevented from doing just that, which runs in our veins, which we were born to do. And I would definitely encourage any woman out there, you know, break through that barrier, whatever fear it is, you know, jump, just do it. And I'm gonna read this quote. We need women. Women are so strong, they can be gentle. So educated, they can be humble. So fierce, they can be compassionate. So passionate, they can be rational. And so disciplined, they can be free.
Well, there it is, folks. Thank you very much to our panel and spending time with me. We're going to move now to questions from viewers, and it's going to be a little bit rapid fire, so we can get to as many questions as possible. So the first one, this is from Christine McCourt Reed. She says, what type of resources are out there to empower Indigenous women to run for politics, whether it's as a councillor, a chief, municipal or provincial representative, such as what to say, how to go about running a campaign, how to target groups, etc., and stay true to who we are as proud, strong, and resilient Indigenous women. So what types of resources are out there to empower Indigenous women to run for politics? And if you're quiet, that speaks volumes.
Resources.
I think one thing to advise is that being a leader is being of service. So we need to be of service. So focus on that we are there to serve. That's why we are at the front. We are the leaders. And in this modern technological age, there's tons of resources online, man, lots. And we have beautiful, wonderful elders and supporters and mentors out there. Ask, just ask. And keep on asking if you don't get the answer you want.
All right. We'll go to Gabrielle. Did you have a lot of resources handed to you for your run in politics?
Absolutely not. There used to be a page on the Alberta government website called Ready for Her, and that was something that I took with me as some tips and tricks on how to run as a woman in municipal politics. Unfortunately, as of this year, they have taken that site down. Not sure why, but that was the only resource that I knew of that I could give to other women that were thinking of running. So for me, a lot of it was mentorship, and it was mainly from males that have ran before. Unfortunately, I didn't know that many females that have run. So for me, it's just mentorship, and that's something that we desperately need more of, is more female mentorship in positions of leadership.
Anyone else want to take a jump at that one?
Yeah, so I did not find any other resources out there, but I do want to encourage people that if they are planning on supporting an Indigenous woman, donate to her campaign, whether it's financially or your time. Go volunteer, help her door knock, help her phone call, help her set up what the volunteers can do, help her in any way, shape, or form. Go there and be of support, because it's not as difficult. I don't want to scare people. It's not as difficult, but we need help. We need help. We need encouragement. And oh my goodness, please, please, please ask them a million times, because they will be probably the most perfect candidate, the most articulate, the most educated, the most whatever that you're seeking in a candidate, and they will feel self-doubt. Ask them a million times. Encourage them. Don't take no for an answer. That's how you can help them. There's no real resources. And shout out to the YWCA for setting this up and encouraging women, because there really isn't a whole lot of resources out there. You have to be the resource yourself. So
Taz, you want to give us one?
I'd have to say, begin, as always, in the beginning in this circle, it expands out, right? Start within your friends. Who's your resources there? And and start attending more meetings, building your support system, and start letting people know that you're interested in running. And people are really good about giving advice and support in various ways. I went to various business meetings. I started putting my face in different places so they'd get to know me. And I was always involved with Out on the Moor, of course. But, make yourself available, volunteer, get to know the community you're going to run for, and the area you're going to run for, the region you're going to run for, and introduce yourself in different ways. And the resources will be there. You can access them and get to know the people. That's part of the role. You do that even before you start campaigning and before you even start making people put in your name that you're going to run. You need to understand the people that you're going to be serving. And the resources will be there. And then, you know, go online, like Cheryl was saying, go online. But specific to Indigenous women, many of us, I'm sure, have accessed elders and kept that grounding there. And, you know, for me, ceremony was always a good place to be. And keeping in mind who I am and what my roots are, and not forgetting that. And then expanding from there, you know, read. There's lots of books in the library on how to run a campaign. Do your research, pay due diligence as if you're going to university, right? It's a whole different blog, and there's all kinds of strategies you can learn, and all kinds of things you can learn from books, from online, from speaking with other people, and then getting the monetary support. That's the tough one.
I love it. All right. Well, I want to get to this next question, and to preface it, I'm going to talk a little bit about how you said invite them, ask them again and again, support and encourage them. You know, a lot of times you'll hear, and I've heard this from people sitting beside me in positions of power. Oh, you know, merit, you know, people who have merit, they rise to the top. And when I ask them, okay, so show me some organizations where merit has risen to the top. Well, lo and behold, those organizations are headed by people who look exactly like them, or have the exact same life experience, or the same background, around the same age, maybe the same gender. And so there's this idea that merit is what's going to take you to the top. But that ignores systemic bias. It ignores racism, it ignores sexism. And so the question is, and this is from Catherine O'Neill, what is one piece of advice you can give to all of us? Let's see, it keeps hopping around. What is one piece of advice you can give to all of us regarding this year's municipal election and electing more Indigenous women to office? And before you answer, I want you to think about this, because you've all been in this position that when you've got a number of incredible people running, you end up splitting a vote. And the sad thing is sometimes the least incredible person kind of comes up the middle. And so how do you navigate this, getting more women, and definitely more Indigenous women, running for office and being successful at it? And does it, and I'm gonna give you a little extra. For me, one thing that I've learned is that although you don't always necessarily need it, money is a massive difference maker. Anyway, go ahead. Let's start with maybe Catherine, because you've been through a number of elections on all sorts of different levels of government now.
Okay, so if you want a woman to run, you can encourage her, you can financially support her, you can do all of those things. But if you want her to win, you must vote for her. You must encourage your friends and family to vote for her. You must get out there and help her get all of those votes. And if you have a great candidate and you have like two amazing candidates and they are running against one another, and one of them just so happens to be an Indigenous woman, I am so sorry, but that woman has been discriminated and discriminated and discriminated. I can guarantee you she has been through it all. Vote for that woman. She deserves your vote.
Okay. Anyone else want to hop in on this one?
Well, I think that people have a difficulty with change. And so any Indigenous woman running needs to focus on being able to address change. You know, many people out there don't like change. They like the status quo, because they know it's their comfort zone. They understand the system as it sits. What they don't understand is change, how that happens and how it could benefit them. So I would strongly encourage anybody running to speak of the benefits of what would happen if change comes about. Because, you know, I was quite surprised how many non-Indigenous people voted for me. And it was because I spoke of change, and there was a need for change. You know, for this upcoming election, there's going to be a lot of change, and the people are in charge of that change. And if they don't get out and vote, and you know, we have a low rate of voters, and we need to increase that. You know, we have Mill Woods is the highest rate of Indigenous population in the city, and so if I realized if every single Indigenous person had gone out and voted for me for mayor for the city of Edmonton, I would have taken the seat. You know, so that's how powerful we can be if everybody gets out to vote. So, you know, sometimes it's not about merit. It's just about people getting out to vote. And in that particular ward, I don't know the names of them nowadays, or in the city, whoever gets out to vote, you know, whoever can get the largest vote wins. It doesn't mean that necessarily they're the best person who's good for the job. It just means they got the largest vote. So, you know, and people don't like change. So if you're Indigenous and you see someone Indigenous, vote for them, because I'm telling you, it's going to make a change that would be in our favor. And it's not just for Indigenous people, it's for anybody who's feeling oppressed, feeling like the system is against them, and feeling unheard, you know, invalidated. The seniors of Edmonton feel very invalidated this time. So go for the seniors vote, talk to people, let them know what changes are going to benefit them, and convince them. You know, sell yourself. That's a hard thing for Indigenous people to do, to sell ourselves, because we're taught to be humble. We're taught not to speak highly of ourselves and brag about ourselves. So that's a barrier for us as a culture, to be able to let people know who we are and what our specific traits are, and on what merits we will, you know, run the office type of thing. And so it's like, don't be afraid to tell people your good points, and don't be afraid to let people know what changes you're going to make. Because running for office is not the time to sit humbly quiet. It's the time to speak out.
Mhm.
Great. Gabrielle, I see your mic's off. Go ahead.
Yeah, so and all of those were amazing points. In addition to all of that, women are amazing at lifting up other women, especially if they see them going for male-dominated leadership positions. But I think that something that we often forget is that we need to leverage the men in our life as well to help also speak to other men and use their privilege to help us get to the positions that we need. Because for men, sometimes it's that deep-seated sexism that they don't even really realize that they're doing. But if they see a woman that wants to go for a leadership position, sometimes they'll start making excuses for why they wouldn't vote for them, such as that they wouldn't be as much of a driver for change, or they wouldn't be as outspoken as a man. And so having the men in your life talk to the other men that are out there, especially during door knocking and campaigning, getting them to also uplift you in the male community is really, really helpful.
Great, thank you. And, oh, Cheryl, go ahead, please.
And it really is a popularity contest. People have to know who you are. Let people know who you are and what you stand for, and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. And who is your target market? Who are you aiming for? Are you aiming for the elders? Are you aiming for the youth? What do you have to give to them? Because people vote for how they believe the vote's going to turn out and what way they will benefit. Show them what the benefit is for them. Let them know this is what can happen. If you vote for me, you can get this. We can do this together. We'll have more voices together singing that same song. So it really is a popularity contest, and you need to be known. Share, show up at all those forums, do your advertising, get on the different social media, and use the people who are in your groups to share their information, the elders to talk amongst themselves, the youth to talk amongst themselves, the men to talk amongst themselves, the mothers to talk among themselves. So it's a matter of getting your information out there, having your name so people know who you are. They're, oh, I know that person, having that recognition. And it is a popularity contest, and it really is about what you do to make yourself that popular person and that person that people can identify with. So it's work on your part too. And I agree that we are meant to be humble, but we're also meant to be truthful and honest. And that is where the strength comes from.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, it's fascinating to hear your answers, because all of your answers have to do with service and making a better community and a better society for everyone. And I think that's really fantastic because you mean it. It's not just buzzwords for a political campaign. This is your core values. And it makes me wonder, and this is the question, another question from Catherine O'Neill. Name one political leader who inspires you. Taz, go ahead.
I'd have to say Gandhi. Isn't that funny, eh? When I watched the movie Gandhi many, many years ago, I was just stunned that he stood up. And I mean, he was a lawyer and he walked away from being a lawyer back to his roots. And that really touched my heart and spoke to me in different ways, because I went, wow, that guy got educated and went home and did more for the people and blended his knowledge of that he got educated with and fought hard for his people. And so when I took up social work, you know, I can remember in one of my first interviews with the professor, he says, you know, you're here to learn an awful lot. And I said, but I'm also here to teach. And thus began our journey of understanding each other. But you know, I realized that Gandhi had a deep impact on me and still does, because he spoke out against all odds. He went against the status quo. He went against what everybody thought was the right thing and the right politicians to be in. And he lived his simple life. And he wasn't a perfect soul. Nobody is, but he did his best. And so there's times where I pulled out Gandhi in my mind when I was struggling in different parts of the campaign. You know, what would have Gandhi have done? and I thought he wouldn't have backed down. He would have stood up and said, this is not right. This is not right. And this is what we have to do. Right. So, I mean, when I went to social work, I can remember them saying, you're coming here to learn an awful lot. I said, actually, I'm coming here to learn the strategy of social work. And I said, I want to understand what you're doing to my people. This is why I'm here. I chose to go to, Grant McEwen, which was non-Indigenous, and said, I want to understand what's happening to the Indigenous communities, what's happening to our people. And I learned a lot there. And I did learn a lot and it helped me in the campaigns. So I think I'd have to say Gandhi would be the person, the leader overall that I had held as someone still do.
Love it. An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind.
Yeah.
Cheryl,
Mm-hmm.
one political leader, or not even political, just one leader who inspires you, I guess. Could be political.
Actually, today I'm a big fan of Deb Haaland in the States. Yeah, go girl, love that lady. And the fact that these women are in power now, Ocasio or Cortez, I love these people. They are leading by example and they're not backing down and they're calling people on their crap. And that's an excellent way to do it. I think of New Zealand and how forthright they've become because of their leadership and how they've managed to dodge that COVID bullet because of their leadership. So we can look elsewhere as well. And I firmly believe that there are a lot of examples that are out there. Here in Canada, we have a new leader of the Green Party, Annamie Paul. And again, she's leading by example. She's showing up and speaking up in both languages. So again, it's using your languages to share in a good way too. So we have people who are in the world today who can inspire us, guide us, lead us, show us how to get it done. That's what we were looking for.
Awesome. All right, Catherine.
So it really depends on what you're asking. Who inspires me or who inspired me? Because who inspired me was lack thereof.
Your choice.
They're really, like, as growing up, there wasn't a whole lot of people for me to look up to. Once upon a time, I was being indoctrinated in school that Ralph Klein was the greatest politician ever, and I should look up to Ralph Klein and everything he was doing. And I really did. I really was inspired by Ralph Klein. I really did look up to him. Mind you, I think it was a part of going to school in a conservative indoctrinating system, being forced to believe that this was the greatest leader ever. Today, there's so many amazing women. Rachel Notley is amazing. Nikki Ashton is amazing. AOC is amazing. It's like you just need to take, you don't need to go far to find inspirational politicians. I mean, this panel of ladies, oh my God, amazing. You women are so inspiring. Everything that comes out of your mouth is just amazing. You don't need to look far.
Oh, that's great. And Gabrielle?
I think that the person that inspired me to get into politics was former NDP federal leader Jack Layton. Before he passed, he had a letter that he sent out, and there was a special part that he said to young Canadians, "Don't let them tell you it can't be done." And that quote has followed me ever since I read that letter. And the day before election day, I read that letter to my campaign team, and I was bawling the whole time. Every time I read that letter, I start crying because it just inspires me so much. But he was a huge inspiration for me. But also, yeah, AOC, she's just, the girl's got it.
That's great. I am absolutely not offended that no one said me. That's okay. All right. So what is one thing you would hope any ally would do to better support Indigenous women and Two-Spirit people in achieving their political aspirations? This comes from Nazreen. So what is one thing you would hope any ally would do to better support you or Two-Spirit candidates in achieving political success? Anyone want to jump in on that one? Go ahead, Catherine.
I would think this falls in line with the first question. Donate to their campaign, encourage the heck out of them, go there and support them, door knock with them, go there and be their inspiration and their support and their help when they're no longer feeling motivated, because it happens. You get a lag and suddenly you don't want to go door knock anymore. Suddenly you're done. That's it. You're not going nowhere. And you need that push, you know. I would definitely say get out there and really inspire them and push them. And you'll get a no a few times, but don't give up on them. Really encourage them. Make them get out there and do it.
How about Taz? You want to go for that?
Oh, sure, why not?
Some kind of idea.
You inspire me, Aaron. I'd have to say, you know what? Get to know the candidate that and financially support them for sure. Everybody give at least $20, at least minimum, right? If you have more to give, support that campaign and offer and volunteer what skills you have that you could be used in the campaign, because there's a lot of different work that needs to be done. And if you have a business, I had a guy who had a business he ran for making up posters and doing websites and stuff. He offered his skills free of charge to help me with my campaign. I took it. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Right. And I'm sure it helped in increasing the votes. So, and also, you know, don't be afraid to talk to your neighborhood and tell the people what you know of the candidate and support your candidate that way. So, you know, there's a few things that you can do to help the Indigenous woman who's running. Definitely money is a huge thing. A huge thing. That's something I have difficulty with, asking for money. Most of us will not get involved with corporations to get money. So it's hard to compete with people who have, you know, $50,000 budgets for campaigning, and you might have $500. So and signs cost money and campaigning costs money. So unfortunately, that's a harsh reality. There is money needed for a campaign.
Yeah, and on that note, it looks like we're out of time, unfortunately. So Cheryl, you had something to say, you know, let's.
Yeah, show me the money.
About
very much show me the money.
And
sweat equity is really good. show up to help, and recognize your privilege as an ally to open the doors, but then stand aside as we speak. Give us the opportunity to speak. Don't speak over us. Open those doors so we can speak. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, definitely, as with everybody else said, just make sure that you back them because they need all the support they can get. If it's an Indigenous person in the community that you can't vote in, still get out there and help them door knock and still get out there and donate to them because that means the world to them.
Donations, sweat equity, and please use your privilege to help others on social media and in the real world. All right. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful. I'm going to pass it over to Sandra to wrap us up. I just can't even believe it. I'm on fire. I'm fired up. If you were all running right now, I'd be donating to your campaigns. All right, Sandra.
Awesome. Thank you, Erin.
This was such an amazing evening. It was so inspiring to listen to you ladies speak. And I must just add that my mom ran for Municipal Council and federal elections a few years ago, 2015 and 2017. And so listening to your stories and seeing the similarities and even how unique your own journeys were, it's really inspiring. And I hope that in my generation, I mean, in my time, in the next few years, that we'll see a Black woman elected to council, an Indigenous woman elected to the Municipal Council in Edmonton. So thank you so much for sharing your stories today. And on behalf of YWCA Edmonton and the Searching for Izena Project, I want to thank you, the 4 panelists, Catherine, Taz, Gabriel, and Cheryl, for your time, your wisdom, and your insights. It was such an inspiring conversation tonight. And thank you to our moderator, Councillor Paquette. Thank you so much for doing such an awesome job in moderating this conversation. And lastly, thank you so much at home, those of you at home who made the time to join us tonight. Thank you for being here. Please stay in touch by visiting the YWCA Edmonton website or the Searching For Izena .com to find out more about the Searching For Izena campaign or how to get involved. The next Searching For Izena podcast episode is being released on Tuesday, next Tuesday. Maybe the next one after that, April 20th. It's about the history of women of color and Indigenous women running for office in Edmonton. So that's a very timely episode, and we hope that you'll tune in to listen to that podcast. So we appreciate your support and interest. Together, we can all help get more women elected because representation matters. To build stronger, healthier, and equal communities, we need elected bodies that look, talk, and think like the people they serve. So have a great evening, everyone, and thanks again for watching tonight's event. Thank you. See you.
Thank you.